Hey there, David Gordon from TheaterMania here. It is Friday, October 30th. I'm here with the great Grace McLean, star, creator of In the Green, a musical for which the cast album was just released. It's a beautiful album. It's a beautiful show, and I think everybody should download it. How are you?
I'm doing all right,
Good. As good as we all are, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I want you to take me back to when you first discovered the seed of the idea for In the Green.
Absolutely. So I studied drama in college in my undergraduate career, but I also studied medieval art, largely because I just liked it and I could. And, my university offered good classes. So I said, I didn't know, really what I was going to do with it, but I knew that I was interested and therefore the path would reveal itself to me. And the path revealed itself in Hildegard von Bingen. So, the thing about medieval art in general is that it all kind of looks the same. Everyone's kind of doing the same thing. But what made Hildegard stand out was not only that her work is attributed to her. A lot of the work that was in the church, and there were no artists who were signing their names on things, but hers is, and she's, not only is it amazing her name is on it, but that she is a woman, because that just wasn't happening for a very long time.
Yeah.
And then her work itself was intensely personal and intensely feminine and just unlike anything else that anybody was producing at the time. And that really jazzed me, if that's a way to say that.
Yeah.
I became jazzed.
When did you think, when did you sit down and say, you know what, her life, her story, just herself would be a good musical?
Well, as I continued to do research on her, initially I was researching her just because I was interested and I didn't know really what I was going to do with it. But my interest, led me from her visual art to her music, which also was very ahead of its time. And her poetry and the way that her philosophy, the way that she was thinking about the world and the macro in the micro, is so different from the way anybody else in the West anyway was thinking about that kind of integration. And I was just inspired by her and just sort of started writing my own things in response to what she was making. And I,
Oh no, have we frozen?
It's just I'm there. Maybe there's here. Maybe there's something.
Oh no, we are a little frozen. So bear
here.
I can hear you.
I didn't quite know what it was.
Yeah.
You're there. I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello?
This is fun.
I know. It's all good though. There, I see you again.
This is freaking great.
Can you hear me?
We gotta just wait it out.
No? I know. Hang on. It's all good. It happens. And you...
David?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
This is my day.
It's all good.
This is my day.
No. How are we? Okay. I'm going to put a title card up. We'll be right back.
Hello?
All right, we're back.
Hello, David? Hello?
Yeah, hi.
This is so fun. This is the day that I'm having. But it's a day that I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with.
Yeah, gotta get down on Friday.
Gotta. Oh, man. Yeah, so she was great. I thought she was cool. And she was just inspiring to me. And so I was creating things that were just, she was plucking a string in me that needed to be sung.
Yeah.
And that just took me further and further into her story. And there's a movie about her. It was a German film Came out in 2012, I think, called Vision, about her whole life. It's really good. There are other people who have done like one-woman shows. I found a one-woman show of this woman who's like a tap dancer. And she was like, Hildegard helped me figure out that tap dancing is my calling. And so she like dresses as a nun, talks about Hildegard, and taps. You can find it on the internet.
That's crazy. Like, and she was someone that I'd never, I'm not a medievalist, so I've never really studied any of this stuff. So seeing the show and the lovely production at Lincoln Center was my first experience with any of it. And then, it's the sort of thing where I went back and did a deep dive because I was like, it was one of the things, it like made me feel like I need to know more because it just all of a sudden felt like a glaring hole in my knowledge of world.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, there's so much about that time period and about, certain parts of our global history that we don't learn about, but especially I just feel like when there's such an amazing anomaly like this woman, we should know about her.
Right. And that's how I felt after seeing it. Tell me about, well, for the people watching this, tell us a little bit about like what the structure of the show is.
Yes. So you've heard me talk a little bit already about the amazing sort of creative life that Hildegard lived, within the church and the Germany in the 12th century. Yeah. But the show takes place in the early part of her life, which people don't normally talk about because she was locked in a cell with another woman for 30 years. We don't have a lot of information about that time because they were locked in a cell together. Yeah. But that's what really intrigued me because it wasn't until that woman that Hildegard was locked away with, until her name was Jutta, she died, that Hildegard was then in her 40s, and then she began her amazing life. And that to me is like, well, what happened in that room? Yeah. In that darkness? What was that relationship that clearly influenced Hildegard, even if that influence was for her to say, I actually don't want to do anything that I just did in those past 30 years. Like she clearly chose to leave that kind of ascetic, confined life and instead like fully integrate and like get her hands dirty with the world. And so, I wanted to write about what that sort of origin story, my imagined version of that might be. And so the show is Hildegard and Jutta in a cell together for 30 years. That's the show. Yeah.
I was gonna ask you how stringent isn't the right word, but like how stringent do you feel like you have to remain to actual history when you're writing something about this when there's not much known? Like, did you feel a need to?
Well, I will say I did a lot of historical research. I did find as much as I possibly could, not only about Hildegard, but about Jutta too. Hildegard actually commissioned like it's a vita, basically like a biography of Jutta when she died. So that was really hard to find, but it's out there. And of course it's like, it's got its own slant on like who she was and la la la. And then you can sort of infer who Jutta was through what Hildegard says about her, which isn't much. Right. What Hildegard basically writes about Jutta is she was crowned with a good death.
That's it.
Okay, that's it. Spent basically her mother. And she was like, yeah. Bye. And then, some things about the time period I read. There were a couple of fantastic biographies that I found about Hildegard. There's also this really great book of fiction about Hildegard and Jutta. Oh, it's called Illuminations. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of that author did some really great research. And then from there also had her own like imaginative take on it, which was inspiring for me as well. So yeah, I didn't want to be just bogged down by the history because that's not dramatic.
Right.
Like ultimately I wanted to be as true to the history as I possibly could for the few nerds out there who would know what I was talking about. Yeah. But then I also wanted to take it out of its historical context, which is why we never really mentioned saints. We never mentioned Jesus. We never mentioned the church. And the music and the style of everything is not 12th century. It's not even really now. It's sort of like a mesh of, I wanted to make it timeless because I think that the story is timeless. A story about people wrestling with their own demons and their own trauma.
Yeah. You had a perfect partner, a perfect theater in LCT3 upstairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
and they're really doing like the most adventurous stuff in New York.
Yeah.
I think. What
I felt really lucky to work with them.
What was that experience like for you? The experience of not only writing this thing but starring in it too, and having both simultaneously.
Super hard. I mean, I'll tell you, writing it and being in it, it's a hard task. And I had also written it in such a way that it was difficult for me to step out of it and ask somebody to play the part so that I could watch, because the way that I'd written the music for myself was kind of a way that only I knew how to do it.
Right. You wrote it
because I was using the looping. Yeah. So it was, there would be times when I'd be working on it and I would feel kind of uncomfortable, and I'd be like, is it uncomfortable because it's written wrong? Is it uncomfortable because I'm performing it wrong? Or is it uncomfortable because it's supposed to be uncomfortable and I just have to like trust that and let that be okay? So that happened a lot. But I did, surround myself with a creative team of people who I trusted, who would help me work through those questions.
Yeah. I love asking this question of artists who act in their own stuff and who perform their own material. Do you, as actor, feel the need to like completely adhere to the text written by you as writer? Like, are you like I have to say every comma and I have to say every line exactly like it is, or else that part of my brain's going to get mad?
A little bit, but also, if you'll remember, David, I pretty much scored almost everything. At least everything that Jutta did was like, if you didn't adhere to the score, the whole thing would be off. Like the whole thing was almost sung through. So I kind of set myself up like in a way where it was essential to adhering. Like that was a playwright like really exacting some control on what I said on the stage. Yeah.
When Ghostlight came to you and said, we want to do an album, what was your reaction? Like, is this the sort of score that you think, like, were you afraid that it would lose something in translation without seeing it live? Or were you, I don't know.
I was really excited, actually, to share. Honestly, had a limit. We could only do 60 minutes of the show. So a lot of the scene work, it's like the weird, like, kind of spoken stuff, I think is pretty fun. We weren't able to record any of that. So my only thought is a little bit like, I wonder if I hope people are still able to follow the story. I hope it's in there. But I am really excited that it does, I think, feel like a complete album and like a complete art, because I'm so glad you think so. Because I really think so too. And I love that all of the different sounds and textures of the show still make their way in there. Like there are some songs that I think are kind of like poppy and like radio friendly, even if you don't like need to know too much about who these ladies are. And then there are some that are like super funky and challenging. And I'm glad that those are in there too. Like I think that they all speak to each other. I'm really proud of it.
It's a really lovely album. It captures the material really well, I think.
I'm so glad. Yeah, thanks.
There's that one song that I really like. It's called Eve. We ran it on the site. I think you guys released like a version of it before the show or something.
Yeah. We when we did a demo recording of it.
Yeah. But no, it's a really cool score.
Thanks.
I'm really happy.
And that line is from Hildegard's first book. I just really loved it. Eve had the whole human race in her body, and we had to coagulate from her blood. And I was like, what?
It's like haunting. It's like bizarre and beautiful and like sort of scary a little bit in that medieval way.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's like those little gems from her that I would find and be like, who is this lady?
Yeah.
I need to shout about her.
Do you feel like you're complete now, having done the show, having performed it, like in terms of what you want to do with Hildegard, or do you like see yourself doing more because there were so many facets of her and it's hard to capture one thing in it?
I mean, that's the thing. Like there could be sequel upon sequel upon sequel. But I don't. I have to think about something else for a little while. I mean, I loved thinking about her, and there is like, God, there's so much to chew on. and it took a lot of chewing to get to that
I'm sure.
real crunchy thing that we made. So I don't know. I'm not going to say no, that it'll never happen, but I'm taking a little breather.
Grace, thank you for your time.
Oh my God, thank you.
My pleasure. In the Green, the cast album, we can find it anywhere music is distributed these days.
It's true.
Be well. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, David.
And take care. Thanks everybody for watching. Have a good weekend.